Hello everyone. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Comment where you're watching from and what time it is right now. That's how YouTube keeps sending you more chilling stories like this. And now, let the night begin with Itones. Story 1. The breathing in the baby monitor. I heard breathing through the monitor at 2:47 a.m. steady, deliberate, like someone standing right over my niece's empty crib. The nursery was locked. I was alone in the house, but someone was in that room exhaling slowly into the darkness. And on my last night, it whispered my name. Let me back up. My sister Jessica asked me to house sit for a week while she and her husband took their first vacation since the baby was born. Easy job: water the plants, grab the mail, sleep in their guest room. Their daughter Lily was staying with Jessica's in-laws, so the house would be empty. Quiet. I was actually looking forward to it. My apartment had paper-thin walls and neighbors who fought at all hours. A week in Jessica's suburban 3-bedroom sounded like paradise. The first 2 nights were perfect. I made myself dinner in their spacious kitchen, watched movies on their huge TV, took long baths in the guest bathroom. The house was beautiful. New construction, everything modern and clean. Jessica had left the baby monitor plugged in on the kitchen counter with a note. Don't worry about this, just leaving it plugged in so the battery stays charged. The small screen glowed softly, showing the empty nursery in grainy night vision green. I didn't think anything of it. On the 3rd night, I woke up at 2:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I checked my phone, annoyed at being jolted out of sleep. That's when I heard it, a sound coming from downstairs. Breathing. Slow, steady, rhythmic breathing. My heart hammered as I crept down the stairs. The sound was coming from the kitchen. As I got closer, I realized it was coming from the baby monitor. I stood in the dark kitchen staring at the small screen. The nursery was empty. I could see the crib, the rocking chair, the mobile hanging motionless. But through the speaker, clear as day, someone was breathing. I told myself it was interference. These things pick up signals from other houses, right? Neighbors' monitors, walkie-talkies, random radio frequencies. I turned the volume down and went back to bed, but I couldn't sleep. Something about that breathing felt wrong. It wasn't the soft, innocent breathing of a baby, it was adult breathing, controlled, aware. The next morning, I checked the nursery. Door locked, just as Jessica had left it. I unlocked it and went inside. Everything was exactly as it should be. Pastel yellow walls, stuffed animals arranged neatly on shelves. The crib with its little sheep mobile. The window was locked. Nothing was disturbed. I felt foolish for being scared. That night, I stayed up late watching TV, trying not to think about it. Around midnight, I headed to bed. As I passed through the kitchen, I glanced at the monitor. The nursery was dark and still. I was almost asleep when I heard it again. 2:47 a.m. I didn't even need to check my phone this time, I just knew. The breathing was back. I lay frozen in the guest bed, listening. It was clearer tonight, more distinct. Slow inhale, deliberate exhale, pause, repeat. It wasn't interference, it was too steady, too rhythmic. Someone was in that nursery breathing into the camera. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the security app Jessica had mentioned. She'd had cameras installed throughout the house after some break-ins in the neighborhood. With shaking hands, I opened the app and found the nursery camera. Empty. Completely empty. But the breathing continued. I got up and walked downstairs, phone in hand, following the sound to the kitchen. The monitor's screen showed the same empty room my phone showed. But the breathing was undeniable, filling the quiet house. I did something stupid then. I walked to the nursery door. It was locked, just like before. I unlocked it with trembling fingers and pushed it open. The room was dark except for the soft glow of the camera's night vision LED. Empty, silent. But the monitor in the kitchen was still transmitting breathing sounds. I walked back to the kitchen and stood in front of the monitor watching the screen. I could see myself on my phone's app standing in the nursery in real time, but the monitor, which was supposed to show the exact same feed, showed an empty room, and the breathing continued. I unplugged the monitor. The screen went dark. The breathing stopped. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with every light on, telling myself I'd imagined it. Old electronics malfunction, audio glitches. There was a rational explanation. The next morning I called Jessica. I didn't want to ruin her vacation, but I needed to know if the monitor had issues. "Oh, that old thing," she said, her voice relaxed and happy. "We don't actually use it anymore. We upgraded to the camera system. I just left it plugged in out of habit." "Why?" I told her it was nothing. Technical curiosity. She laughed and told me to enjoy the quiet. But it wasn't quiet. That afternoon, I searched online for stories about baby monitors picking up strange signals. I found dozens. Monitors showing other people's houses, picking up conversations from blocks away, even receiving old radio broadcasts. I felt better. This was normal, explainable. I left the monitor unplugged all day. That night, the fifth night, I went to bed around 11. I was exhausted from lack of sleep and I crashed hard. Until 2:47 a.m. I woke to breathing, but this time it wasn't coming from downstairs. It was coming from inside the guest room. I lay perfectly still, barely breathing myself, listening. It was soft, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The sound of someone breathing slowly, carefully, somewhere in the darkness of the room. I fumbled for my phone and turned on the flashlight. The room was empty. Closet door closed, window locked. Nothing. But I could still hear it. I realized with creeping horror that it was coming from the baby monitor downstairs. Even unplugged somehow, it was transmitting. The sound was faint but unmistakable, drifting up the stairs and through the quiet house. I went downstairs. Every light I passed, I turned on. The monitor was still unplugged on the kitchen counter, screen dark and lifeless. But I could hear breathing coming from its speaker. Impossible, but real. I picked it up. The plastic was warm, as if it had been running all day. On the dark screen, barely visible, I saw a flicker of movement. I pressed the power button. Nothing happened. It wasn't plugged in, had no batteries. But the screen began to glow very faintly, showing the nursery in that eerie night vision green. And someone was standing in the corner. Not clearly, just a shape, a shadow darker than the rest, standing perfectly still beside the dresser. The camera angle shouldn't have even reached that corner. But there it was. The breathing grew louder. I dropped the monitor and ran to the nursery. I threw the door open. I'd left it unlocked and hit the lights. Empty. I checked the closet behind the dresser, under the crib. Nothing. No one. I pulled out my phone and opened the security app. The camera showed exactly what I was seeing. An empty room, brightly lit, everything in place. I went back to the kitchen. The monitor was face down on the floor where I'd dropped it. I picked it up slowly. The screen was dark again. I stood there for a long time, holding this impossible thing, trying to make sense of it. Then I took it out to the garage and buried it in a box of old baby clothes. I didn't hear anything that night. On my last night, the 7th night, I was packing my things, relieved to be leaving in the morning. Jessica and her husband would be home by noon. I'd survived the week. Whatever had happened, it was over. I went to bed at 10, determined to get a full night's sleep. At 2:47 a.m., I woke up. The breathing was back. Louder than ever, and it was coming from right next to my bed. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I lay there, paralyzed with terror, listening to someone breathe slowly and deliberately, inches from my face. In. Out. In. Out. Then I heard my name. Not through a monitor, not from downstairs, right next to my ear, a whisper so soft I almost thought I'd imagined it. "Morgan." I don't remember grabbing my keys. I don't remember running to my car. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in a 24-hour diner 3 miles away, shaking so hard I couldn't hold my coffee cup. I texted Jessica that I'd had a family emergency and had to leave early. I'd left the house locked and secure, so sorry. She texted back that it was fine, hoped everything was okay. I never told her what happened. What could I say? That her baby monitor was haunted? That something in her house knew my name? The rational part of my brain still tries to explain it. Audio pareidolia, hearing patterns and random noise, sleep deprivation causing hallucinations, stress-induced paranoia, but I know what I heard. Jessica called me 2 weeks later. She said something funny had happened. The old baby monitor had turned itself on in the garage. She'd heard it making noise and found it buried in a box, screen glowing, transmitting static. "Weird, right?" she said, laughing. "These old electronics are so glitchy." I agreed. So weird. She said she threw it away, but sometimes late at night when I'm alone in my apartment, I wake up at exactly 2:47 a.m. And in the silence, just for a moment, I swear I can hear breathing. Steady, rhythmic, deliberate, and I wonder if throwing it away was enough. Story 2. Someone was using my shower. I came home early from work and heard water running. The shower, in my apartment, where I lived alone. I stood frozen in the hallway, listening to someone humming softly behind my locked bathroom door. It started about 3 weeks after my roommate Connor moved out. I'd been looking forward to living alone for the first time since college. No more sharing the bathroom, no more compromises on groceries, no more awkward small talk in the kitchen at 6 a.m. Just me, my one-bedroom apartment, and blessed silence. The first week was perfect. I walked around in my underwear, left dishes in the sink overnight, stayed up late watching TV without headphones. Freedom. Then I started noticing small things. The bathroom mirror would be fogged with condensation when I came home from work. At first, I thought maybe I'd taken a shower that morning and somehow forgotten, but I hadn't. I was sure of it. I showered at night, not in the morning. I checked the window, maybe humidity from outside, but it was February, cold and dry. Then I found a towel in the hamper that I didn't remember using. It was damp. Smelled like soap, but not my soap. Something floral and unfamiliar. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe I'd used a different towel. Maybe I'd bought new soap and forgotten. I'd been stressed at work, sleeping poorly. Memory was a weird thing, but the unease stuck with me. I started paying closer attention. One evening I came home and the bathroom felt warm, like someone had just been in there. The mirror was fogged, and when I touched the shower curtain, it was damp. I lived alone. The door had been locked. No one had a key except me and the building manager. That night, I checked every lock, every window. Everything was secure. I even looked in the closets under the bed, feeling ridiculous but unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong. A few days later, I noticed my shampoo bottle was in a different position. I kept it on the left side of the shower caddy, but now it was on the right. Small thing. Meaningless, probably. Except I hadn't moved it. I started coming home and immediately checking the bathroom. Most days, everything seemed normal. But twice more I found evidence. A foggy mirror, a damp towel, that strange floral scent lingering in the air. I thought about cameras. Had someone installed cameras? Was this some creepy voyeur situation? I searched every inch of the bathroom. Nothing. I thought about asking my neighbors if they'd noticed anything strange, but what would I say? "Excuse me, do you know if anyone's been breaking into my apartment to take showers?" I'd sound insane. On a Thursday, 3 weeks into this nightmare, I left work early. I'd been feeling sick all morning and my boss told me to go home. It was barely 2 p.m. when I unlocked my apartment door, and I heard water running. My entire body went cold. The shower was on, right now, in my apartment, where no one should be. I stood in my entryway, frozen, listening. The steady stream of water hitting tile, and beneath it was that humming? Soft, melodic, barely audible. Someone was in my shower. I should have left. I should have called 911 from the hallway, but my phone was in my hand, and some primal part of my brain needed to know, needed to see. I crept toward the bathroom. The door was closed. A thin line of light showed underneath. Steam was seeping out into the hallway. My hand shook as I reached for the doorknob. It turned easily, unlocked. I pushed the door open. Steam billowed out. The shower was running full blast, water pounding against the curtain. The bathroom was thick with humidity, the mirror completely obscured. The humming stopped. I yanked the shower curtain back, ready to scream, ready to fight. Empty. Just water cascading down onto empty tile. I stared, mind reeling. I'd heard humming. I'd heard someone in here. But the shower was empty and I was alone. I turned off the water with shaking hands. Silence flooded the apartment. That's when I noticed the message on the foggy mirror. 2 words written in the condensation by someone's finger. Found you. I ran. I didn't grab clothes, didn't grab anything. I just ran out of that apartment and didn't stop until I was at my car. I called the police from the parking lot. 2 officers came and searched the apartment. They found nothing. No signs of forced entry. No one hiding anywhere. No explanation for the message on the mirror. By the time they'd finished searching, the mirror had cleared. No evidence. They asked if I'd been under stress, if I lived alone, if I'd considered that maybe I'd written the message myself and forgotten. I moved out 2 days later, broke my lease, lost my deposit, didn't care. The landlord was furious until I told him why. Then he got quiet. He asked which apartment I'd been in. When I told him, he got even quieter. "Did your roommate tell you?" he finally asked. "Tell me what?" He hesitated. "The previous tenant, before you and Connor moved in. She reported the same thing. Showers running, foggy mirrors, feeling like someone was in the apartment. We had the locks changed, had the place inspected, never found anything. She left after 2 months. My blood ran cold. "Why didn't you tell us?" He shrugged. "She seemed unstable. We thought she was imagining things." I asked what happened to her. He didn't know. She just disappeared, stopped returning calls, left no forwarding address. I think about her sometimes, about what "found you" meant. I've been in my new apartment for 4 months now. Different building, different neighborhood, better locks. But last week I came home from work and the bathroom mirror was fogged. I stood in the doorway staring at the condensation slowly dripping down the glass, and I felt that same cold dread. I don't shower at home anymore. I go to the gym. It's inconvenient, but I can't bring myself to step into that bathroom alone. Can't shake the feeling that if I do, I'll hear humming again. And I'll turn around to find someone standing there smiling, as if they've been waiting for me all along. Story 3. The footsteps that matched mine. I stopped walking in the middle of my apartment and the footsteps stopped too. Perfect synchronization. Then I took 1 step forward, slowly, deliberately, and from somewhere in the darkness, a second footstep echoed mine. Someone was matching my every movement, walking when I walked, stopping when I stopped. They'd been doing it all night, and I'd been too terrified to realize they were coming from inside. Let me explain how I got there. I moved into apartment 4B in late September. It was an older building in a decent neighborhood. Hardwood floors, High ceilings, the kind of place that looked charming in daylight but felt cavernous at night. The floors creaked with every step, which I'd found quaint at first. Character, the landlord had called it. History. By the third month, I knew exactly which boards creaked and where. The spot near the kitchen threshold, the strip in the hallway between the bedroom and bathroom, the corner by the living room window. I'd memorized them the way you memorize the sounds of your own home. Living alone, you become attuned to every noise. You learn the difference between the building settling and something else, between the wind and footsteps, between alone and not alone. For 3 months, I felt safe. Then, on a Wednesday night in December, everything changed. I was walking from my bedroom to the kitchen to get water. It was late, after midnight, and the apartment was dark except for the hallway nightlight I kept plugged in by the bathroom. My feet hit the familiar creaking boards in their familiar pattern. Creak, creak, creak. And then I heard it. Creak, creak, creak. The same pattern, the same rhythm, but offset by half a second, like an echo that didn't quite match. I froze mid-step. Silence. I stood perfectly still in the dark hallway, heart hammering, listening. Nothing. Just my own breathing, too loud in the quiet apartment. I told myself it was the apartment below me. Sound traveled weird in old buildings. The woman below me was probably walking around her own apartment, and I was hearing it through the floor. I continued to the kitchen, got my water, and went back to bed. But I lay awake for a long time, listening. The next night I heard it again. I was walking from the living room to the bedroom, bare feet on hardwood, and there it was. That echo. Footsteps perfectly synchronized with mine, delayed by just a fraction of a second. I stopped. They stopped. I took one step. One step echoed back. My skin went cold. This wasn't the apartment below me. This was too precise, too perfectly timed. I walked to the window and looked down at the building's facade. The apartment below me was dark. Everyone was asleep. I checked every room. Closets, bathroom, behind the shower curtain, under the bed. I felt insane, but I checked. Nothing. I was alone. That night I researched acoustics in old buildings, sound reflection, auditory pareidolia. I found enough explanations to convince myself I was being irrational. Old buildings made strange noises. My brain was pattern matching where no pattern existed. But the footsteps came back the next night, and the night after that. Always the same pattern, perfectly synchronized with mine, that half-second delay. Always at night. Always when I was walking between rooms, I started walking differently, quietly on tiptoe, trying not to make the floors creak. But the echo footsteps adjusted, softer, matching my caution. One night I decided to test it. I stood in the middle of the living room at 1 a.m., lights off, and stamped my foot once. Hard. Silence. I waited. Nothing happened. Relief flooded through me. See? Nothing. Just my imagination, just anxiety, just... I took a normal step toward the bedroom. A footstep echoed behind me. I spun around. Empty apartment. Shadows and silence. I walked again. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. Behind me, the footsteps followed. Creak, creak, creak. I ran. I ran straight to my bedroom, slammed the door, and shoved a chair under the handle. I sat on my bed, shaking, listening. For a long time, nothing. Just my ragged breathing and the sound of blood pounding in my ears. Then from the hallway, slow and deliberate. Creak, creak, creak. Footsteps approaching my bedroom door. They stopped right outside. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with my back against the headboard, staring at the door, waiting for the handle to turn. It never did. At dawn, I opened the door. The hallway was empty. Everything was exactly as it should be. I called in sick to work and spent the day searching the apartment. I moved furniture. I examined the walls for hidden doors, checked the ceiling for access panels, looked for any way someone could be getting in. Nothing. That night I stayed at a hotel. I needed sleep, needed distance, needed to think clearly. I came back the next evening determined to solve this. I set up my phone to record audio in the hallway, positioned to catch any sound. Then I walked my normal route. Bedroom to kitchen, kitchen to living room back to bedroom. The footsteps followed me the whole time. When I played back the recording, my heart sank. I could hear my footsteps clearly, but there was no echo, no second set of footsteps. Whatever I was hearing, the phone couldn't pick it up. I started to doubt my own sanity. Was I having some kind of breakdown? Auditory hallucinations? I'd been stressed at work, sleeping poorly. Maybe my mind was creating sounds that weren't there. I made an appointment with my doctor. But before I could go, something happened that proved I wasn't imagining things. It was a Saturday night. My friend Kayla came over for dinner. We had wine, watched a movie, talked until late. Around 11 p.m., she got up to use the bathroom. I watched her walk down the hallway, heard the familiar creak of the floorboards. Creak, 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 and then I heard it, the echo, matching her footsteps. My blood went cold. "Kayla," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. Did you hear that?" She came back down the hall, looking confused. "Hear what? When you were walking, did you hear anything else?" She frowned. "Like what?" I couldn't explain. I sounded insane, even thinking about saying it out loud. I told her never mind, just thought I heard something outside, but after she left, I knew. I wasn't imagining it. The footsteps were real. I decided to stay awake all night and track the footsteps. Figure out exactly where they were coming from. At 2 a.m., I walked slowly through the apartment, stopping every few feet to listen. The footsteps followed. I traced the sound carefully, trying to pinpoint the source. They were coming from inside the walls. Not above me, not below me, inside. The hollow spaces between the walls where pipes and wiring ran. Someone or something was in the walls, matching my movements. I pressed my ear against the wall in the hallway. For a long moment, silence. Then I heard it. Breathing. Slow, steady breathing, just on the other side of the drywall. I staggered back, tripping over my own feet. The breathing stopped. I ran to grab a flashlight and a hammer. If something was in the walls, I was going to find it. I went to the bedroom closet where I'd always wondered about a slightly discolored section of wall. I tapped it with the hammer. Hollow. I hit it harder. The drywall cracked. A few more hits and a hole opened up. I shined the flashlight inside, expecting. I don't know what I was expecting. Rats, pipes, nothing. What I saw made my stomach drop. The space inside the wall was wider than it should be. Not just a gap for utilities, but a crawl space, maybe 2 feet wide, running parallel to the hallway. And on the floor of that space, a blanket, a flashlight, a water bottle. Someone had been living in my walls. I called the police immediately. They came with dogs and flashlights and searched the entire building. They found the crawl space network that ran between several apartments, accessible through a maintenance panel in the basement that should have been locked but wasn't. They found evidence of someone living there. Food wrappers, clothes, a sleeping bag. But whoever it was had run when they heard me breaking through the wall. The building manager was horrified. The locks were changed on all maintenance access points. The police increased patrols. They never caught whoever it was. The landlord offered to let me break my lease. I left the next day. I'm in a new apartment now. Modern construction, concrete walls, no hollow spaces. I checked before I signed the lease, but I still hear footsteps sometimes at night. That same half-second delay perfectly synchronized with mine. My therapist says it's PTSD, phantom sounds, my brain replaying trauma. Maybe she's right. but last week I was walking to the kitchen at 2 a.m. and I heard them again. I stopped. They stopped. And this time, in the silence after, I heard something new. A soft tap, tap, tap on the wall. Like someone knocking from the inside. I haven't walked around my apartment at night since. I stay in bed until morning, lights on, trying to convince myself that modern apartments don't have crawl spaces, that no one could be in these walls. But I lie awake listening, waiting for the footsteps to start again. And I wonder if whoever was in my old walls followed me here, if they're patient enough to wait until I stop being careful. If one night I'll hear footsteps that don't stop when I stop, footsteps that come closer instead, that stop right outside my bedroom door, and I wonder if this time the door will open. Story 4. The face in my laptop camera. I saw a face in the black reflection of my laptop screen, pale, expressionless, watching me from behind. I spun around to an empty apartment, heart pounding, telling myself it was a trick of the light. But then I saw the little green light beside my camera glowing faintly in the darkness. It had been on for weeks. Someone had been watching me this entire time. I keep my laptop open on the coffee table pretty much always. It's convenient. I work from home half the week and I like having it ready for late-night emails or when I can't sleep and need to watch something. I'm a graphic designer, so my computer is basically an extension of myself. The laptop sits on the coffee table facing my couch. When the screen is off, it's just a black mirror reflecting the room behind it. I'd never really paid attention to it before. Until one night in January, I was sitting on the couch scrolling through my phone around 11 p.m. The apartment was quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic outside. The laptop was in front of me, screen dark, and I was half watching its black reflection without really thinking about it. That's when I saw it, a face, pale and still, hovering in the reflection behind me. I spun around so fast I almost fell off the couch. My heart was hammering, adrenaline flooding my system. Nothing, no one, just my empty apartment. I stood up, breathing hard, and checked every room. Bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, closet. I looked behind furniture, checked the locks, peered out the windows. Nothing. When I came back to the living room, I stared at the laptop. Just my own reflection now, distorted in the black screen. I told myself I'd seen my own face and, startled by it, had panicked. The mind plays tricks in low light. I closed the laptop and went to bed, but I couldn't shake the image. That face hadn't looked like mine. It had been too pale, too still, and the angle had been wrong. It was behind me and slightly above, as if someone had been standing rather than sitting. The next few days I was hyper-aware of the laptop. Every time I walked past it, I glanced at the screen. During the day, it seemed ridiculous that I'd been scared. At night, I started closing it before bed. A week later, I was on a video call with a client going over some design mock-ups. We talked for maybe 40 minutes. When the call ended and the screen went dark for a moment before returning to my desktop, I saw it again in the reflection. The face, same position, same pale, expressionless features. There for just a second before the desktop loaded and the screen lit up. My stomach dropped. I turned around slowly. Empty room. I sat very still, trying to rationalize. It was my reflection. It had to be. Maybe the laptop's positioning created some kind of optical illusion. Maybe the camera's lens created a distortion that looked like a second face. That's when I noticed it. The little green light beside my camera. It was on. I wasn't in a call. I didn't have any programs running that should be using the camera. But the light was on. A tiny green LED indicator that the camera was active. I immediately covered the camera with a piece of tape and ran a security scan on my computer. Nothing. No malware detected, no suspicious programs running. I checked my installed applications. Everything looked normal. I researched camera indicators. Some forums said the light could glitch, could stay on even when the camera wasn't active. A hardware issue, nothing sinister. I wanted to believe that. That night I left the tape over the camera but opened the laptop. I sat on the couch and deliberately looked at the dark screen's reflection. Just me. Just my apartment. Nothing unusual. I felt stupid for being paranoid. Over the next week, I kept the camera taped but otherwise tried to forget about it. I worked, watched movies, lived normally. The green light stayed off now that I'd restarted the computer. Everything seemed fine, but then I started noticing other small things. My laptop's battery was draining faster than usual. When I checked the battery usage stats, there were gaps in the data. Hours where something had been running but wasn't logged. Files on my desktop had been accessed recently. Just little things, photos, documents. The access dates had changed, but I hadn't opened them. And one morning I found the tape over my camera had been peeled back slightly at one corner. Not removed, just lifted, as if someone had tried to peek underneath. I lived alone. I hadn't touched the tape. That's when I really started to panic. I took the laptop to a tech repair shop and explained the situation. The guy was skeptical but agreed to do a deep diagnostic. He called me 2 days later. His voice was different on the phone, serious, uncomfortable. "You should come in," he said. When I got there, he took me to a back room and showed me what he'd found. Someone had installed remote access software on my computer, hidden deep in the system files not showing up on normal scans. It allowed someone to access my camera, my microphone, my files, everything. "How long has it been there?" I asked, my voice shaking. He checked the installation date. 3 months. Almost 3 months. I felt sick. 3 months of someone having complete access to my computer, my camera, watching me in my apartment. Working, sleeping, changing clothes, everything. "Can you tell who installed it?" I asked. He shook his head. "It's sophisticated, not something you'd accidentally download. Someone would have needed physical access to your computer, or you'd have to have clicked a very convincing phishing link." I tried to think. Who had access to my laptop? I brought it to coffee shops sometimes, but I never left it unattended. I'd had a few friends over, but I trusted them, unless... Then I remembered. 2 months ago, my laptop had been acting weird, freezing, running slow. A guy from my building, Tyler from 6C, had mentioned he used to work in IT. I'd asked him to take a look at it one evening. He'd had it for maybe an hour, said he'd run some diagnostics and cleared some cache files. It had run better after that. Tyler, quiet, polite Tyler, who always said hi in the hallway and sometimes mentioned he worked from home too. Tyler, who had offered to help without me even asking. The tech removed the software and helped me set up better security. I filed a police report, gave them Tyler's name. They went to his apartment. He was gone, completely cleared out. The landlord said he'd moved out suddenly, paid to break his lease, left no forwarding address. The police searched the empty apartment. They found a desktop computer with an external hard drive. On it, folders of photos and videos, organized by apartment number. 4B, my apartment, hundreds of photos, videos of me working, eating, watching TV, sleeping, months of footage. There were other folders too. 3A, 5C, 6B, other people in the building he'd been watching. They never found him. His real name wasn't Tyler Morrison. The ID he'd used to rent the apartment was fake. He'd disappeared completely. I moved out of that building 2 weeks later. I sold my laptop and bought a new one. I keep the camera covered with a physical slider now, and I'm obsessive about security updates. But here's the thing that still keeps me up at night. That face I saw in the reflection. It wasn't my reflection distorted. And it wasn't just my imagination, I think it was his face. Tyler's face. I think the software let him see what my camera saw, and somehow, in the reflection of the dark screen, I saw what he was seeing. I saw him watching me through the camera, his face captured in that black mirror for just a moment. And I wonder how many times he was there, virtually standing behind me, watching through that camera while I sat unaware. How many nights I'd been alone in my apartment while simultaneously not alone at all. I still use my laptop every day. I have to for work. But sometimes, late at night, when the screen goes dark for a moment, I see that pale, still face in the reflection. And even though I know it's impossible, even though the camera is covered and the software is gone and Tyler is gone, I can't shake the feeling that somewhere, somehow, he's still watching. That the next time I see that face in the dark screen, it won't be a memory. It'll be live. Story 5. Something was living in my walls. The scratching woke me at 3 a.m., soft, deliberate, coming from inside the wall behind my bed. I knocked back, annoyed, thinking it was mice. The scratching stopped. Then, slowly, it knocked back. 3 taps, rhythmic, intentional. Something in my walls was responding to me. I'm a rational person. I believe in science, logic, reasonable explanations. When I first heard the scratching, I thought, mice, old building, wintertime, rodents looking for warmth. Annoying but solvable. This was early February. I'd been living in my apartment for about 8 months, a 1-bedroom in a converted Victorian house, 3rd floor. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, original crown molding, charming, historic. The kind of place that makes you overlook the quirks, like the radiator that clangs at night or the way the pipes groan when someone runs water 2 floors below. The scratching started small. Just occasional sounds, almost missable. I'd be reading in bed and hear it scritch, scritch somewhere in the walls. Brief, then silent. I called my landlord. He sent an exterminator. The guy checked every room, looked for droppings, examined the baseboards. No evidence of mice, he said. Sometimes old houses just settle, wood expanding and contracting. I accepted that explanation for about a week. Then the scratching got louder. It happened mostly at night. I'd be lying in bed, almost asleep, and it would start, behind the wall near the headboard. Scritch, 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 rhythmic, persistent. Too loud to be mice, too deliberate to be settling wood. I started tracking it. Which walls? What time? How long it lasted? The pattern became clear. It was always behind my bedroom wall, the one my bed was against, always between 2 and 4 a.m. And it would stop the moment I sat up or turned on the light. One night, frustrated and exhausted, I pounded my fist against the wall. "Shut up," I yelled. The scratching stopped. Silence. Complete silence. Then slowly, clearly, tap, tap, tap. 3 measured knocks, coming from inside the wall. My blood went cold. That wasn't settling. That wasn't pipes or radiators or wood expanding. Something had heard me, and it had responded. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with my back against the headboard, lights on, listening. The scratching didn't come back, but I could feel it. A presence. A awareness, something waiting on the other side of that wall. In the morning, exhausted and wired on fear and caffeine, I examined the bedroom wall. It was solid plaster over lathe, original to the house. No cracks, no holes, no obvious way for something to be inside. But when I knocked on it, it sounded hollow. I called the landlord again, told him about the knocking. He sighed. I could hear the eye roll in his voice, and said he'd come by. He showed up that evening, went straight to the bedroom, knocked on the wall. "It's hollow because there's a gap between the walls," he explained, as if I were a child. Old houses have spaces for insulation, for running pipes and wires, completely normal. "So something could be in there," I said. "Like what? A mouse, maybe." But the exterminator didn't find evidence. It knocked back, I interrupted. I knocked on the wall, and it knocked back. He looked at me like I'd suggested the apartment was haunted. You probably heard an echo. Sound bounces in these old structures. He left. I stood alone in my bedroom staring at the wall, knowing what I'd heard wasn't an echo. That night the scratching came back. Louder, more insistent. Not just scratching now, it sounded like scraping, like something dragging against the inside of the wall. And it was moving. I tracked the sound as it traveled from behind my bed along the wall toward the corner where my dresser stood. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if whatever was inside was crawling through the narrow space between the walls. When it reached the corner, it stopped. I sat frozen on my bed, staring at the dresser. Then I heard it, a different sound, not scratching or scraping. A soft thud, like something dropping. Then silence. I didn't investigate that night. I grabbed my phone and slept on the couch with every light in the apartment on. At dawn, I forced myself to go back into the bedroom. Everything looked normal. Dresser against the wall, nothing disturbed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. I got down on my hands and knees and looked behind the dresser. At first, I didn't see anything. Then I noticed it. A small section of the baseboard was loose, slightly displaced. With shaking hands, I pulled the dresser away from the wall. Behind it, the baseboard had been removed entirely, and there was a hole. Not a crack or a gap, but a hole. Smooth-edged, deliberate, about 8 inches in diameter, just wide enough for something to crawl through. I shined my phone's flashlight into the hole. It opened into darkness, the hollow space between the walls. And on the floor of that space, I saw something that made my stomach turn. Handprints. Small handprints in the dust, leading deeper into the wall than I could see. Not paw prints, not rats or mice or any animal, human handprints. Child-sized, but the proportions were wrong. Fingers too long, spacing too wide. I called the police. 2 officers came. They looked in the hole, saw the handprints, called for backup. Within an hour, my apartment was full of people. Police, the landlord, a building inspector. They opened up sections of the wall, found the crawl space network that ran between the 3rd-floor apartments, spaces created by the Victorian renovation decades ago, spaces that shouldn't have been accessible but were, through old maintenance panels that had been pried open. They found evidence of habitation, food wrappers, empty water bottles, a blanket, and they found more handprints, dozens of them tracking through the dust along the beams into spaces too narrow for an adult to fit. But no one was there. Whoever or whatever had been living in my walls was gone. The building inspector measured the crawl spaces. Some were barely 14 inches wide. He said no adult could fit through them, maybe a child or a very small person, but the idea of someone living in those cramped, dark spaces for an extended period seemed impossible. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The landlord sealed the hole, reinforced all the maintenance panels, promised the building was now secure. The police filed a report but had no leads. No missing persons matched the profile. No explanation for who could have been there or where they'd gone. I didn't stay. I broke my lease and moved out within a week. But here's what I didn't tell the police. What I didn't tell anyone. The night before they found the hole, I'd heard something else. After the scratching stopped, after that soft thud, I'd heard breathing. Very faint, barely perceptible, but there. Coming from inside the wall. And I'd heard a sound, not quite a voice, not quite a whisper, but something that sounded like words. Too muffled to understand, but with the rhythm and cadence of speech. As if something in the walls was trying to talk to me. I'm in a new apartment now. Modern construction, concrete and drywall, no hollow spaces. I made sure of it before I signed the lease. But sometimes, late at night, I hear scratching. Faint, barely there, like it's coming from very far away. I tell myself it's the building settling, pipes, radiators, normal sounds. But then I'll be lying in bed, almost asleep, and I'll hear it. Tap, 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 3 knocks. And I wonder if what was in my walls wasn't confined to that one building. If it found a way to follow me. If it's patient enough to wait in the spaces between walls, in the darkness behind the drywall, until I stop being careful. Until I forget to check behind my furniture. Until I stop listening. I still check the baseboards in my apartment, every single one, and I pull my dresser away from the wall once a week to make sure there are no holes. So far, everything's been solid, but I can't shake the feeling that one night I'll shine my flashlight behind the dresser and see it. A fresh hole, smooth-edged and deliberate. And small handprints in the dust leading into the darkness. Story 6, the voicemail I sent myself. My phone buzzed at 7 a.m. with a new voicemail from my own number, time-stamped 3:18 a.m. I listened to it with growing horror. My own voice, panicked and whispering, "He's in the house. He's in the house. Don't fall asleep." I had no memory of making that call. I'd been asleep all night, alone. I need you to understand something first. I don't sleepwalk. I never have. I sleep heavily, don't remember my dreams, and I wake up in the same position I fell asleep in. My phone stays on my nightstand, plugged in all night. So when I saw that voicemail notification, my first thought was that it was a glitch. Some weird technical error. I almost deleted it without listening. But curiosity got the better of me. I tapped play and held the phone to my ear. For a few seconds, just breathing. Fast, shallow, panicked breathing. Then my voice, unmistakably my voice, whispering urgently, "He's in the house. He's in the house. Don't fall asleep." A pause. More breathing. Then, "I can hear him moving around. He doesn't know I'm awake. Oh God, he's coming up the stairs." The voicemail cut off. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. That was my voice, my speech patterns, my slight Midwestern accent, my breathing. But I had no memory of making that call. I checked my phone's call log. There it was. Outgoing call to my own number at 3:18 a.m., duration 47 seconds. I'd called myself at 3:18 in the morning and left a terrified message about someone in the house. My apartment was empty. I lived alone. The door was locked, deadbolt engaged, chain in place, just as I'd left it before bed. Nothing was disturbed. Everything was exactly as it should be. I played the voicemail again and again, listening to my own panicked whisper, trying to remember. Had I been having a nightmare? Had I woken up disoriented and in some half-asleep state called myself? But I'd never sleepwalked or talked in my sleep. And the call log showed I'd been on the call for 47 seconds. That's not a confused half-asleep moment. That's enough time to be aware, coherent, terrified. He's coming up the stairs. My apartment didn't have stairs. It was a ground floor studio, single level, no stairs. Unless the message wasn't meant for present me. Unless past me at 3:18 a.m. had been trying to warn future me about something. But what? I checked every inch of my apartment. Closets, bathroom, under the bed, behind furniture. I was alone. No evidence anyone had been there. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe my phone had been hacked. Maybe someone had access to my voicemail, could spoof my voice using AI. I'd read about that, voice cloning technology getting scary good, but why? What would be the point of someone creating a fake voicemail to scare me? I called my phone provider, asked if there was any way someone could have accessed my voicemail or call logs. The representative said it was possible but unlikely, and they couldn't see any unauthorized access on their end. I almost convinced myself it was a prank or a hack, Almost. Then I made a mistake. I checked my phone's location history. I have it enabled for safety, so if my phone gets stolen, I can track it. I pulled up the timeline for last night. At 10:47 p.m., my phone was at home. I'd gone to bed around 11, so that made sense. At 3:18 a.m., my phone was moving. The little blue dot showed movement through my apartment, from the bedroom to the living room to the kitchenette, back to the living room, to the front door, then back to the bedroom. According to my phone, at 3:18 a.m., I had been walking around my apartment for several minutes, methodically, room to room, but I had no memory of it. I felt sick. I sat down on the couch, staring at the location history, watching the blue dot trace a pattern I didn't remember making. Then I noticed something else. The pattern wasn't random. The path the blue dot took was deliberate. I was checking each room, each possible hiding spot. I was searching for someone. At 3:18 a.m., some version of me had been awake, terrified, moving through my apartment, searching for an intruder. And I'd called myself to leave a warning, but I had no memory of any of it. I made an appointment with my doctor, explained the situation, sleepwalking, memory gaps, dissociative episodes. She referred me to a neurologist. Tests were scheduled. Everything came back normal. No signs of a sleep disorder, no neurological abnormalities. The neurologist suggested a sleep study. I agreed. For a week, I wore a device that tracked my sleep patterns, movements, vitals. Every night I went to bed terrified I'd wake up to another voicemail, another gap in my memory. Nothing happened. I slept normally, didn't move, didn't wake. The sleep study showed completely normal sleep architecture. I started to think it had been a one-time thing. A weird anomaly. Stress-induced sleepwalking may be triggered by work pressure or anxiety. Then it happened again. 3 weeks after the first voicemail, I woke up to another notification. Voicemail from my own number, time-stamped 3:18 a.m. My hands shook as I played it, my voice whispering, "He was in the closet. I found where he hides. There's food wrappers, a blanket. He's been living here. I don't know how long. I'm calling the police after this. If you're hearing this and I don't remember, check the closet, check behind the coats." The message ended. I ran to the closet, threw open the door, shoved aside the coats hanging there. Nothing. Just the back wall of the closet, solid, undisturbed. But when I looked closer, I saw something. The back wall was paneling, not drywall, old wood paneling painted white. And one of the panels was slightly loose at the bottom corner. I pulled at it. It came away easily, revealing a space behind it. Not a large space, maybe 3 feet deep, but enough. Inside, a pillow, a fleece blanket, granola bar wrappers, an empty water bottle. Someone had been hiding in my closet. I called 911. Police came, searched the apartment, dusted for fingerprints. They found evidence of someone entering and exiting through a window I rarely opened. It had been jimmied from the outside, the lock broken in a way that wasn't immediately obvious. They estimated someone had been coming into my apartment for weeks, maybe longer, hiding in that space behind the closet panel while I was home, leaving when I went to work. The detective asked if I'd noticed anything strange before the voicemails. I tried to think. Small things. Maybe. Food disappearing faster than I remembered eating it, feeling like things were moved. But nothing concrete, nothing I'd paid attention to. "You probably heard something at night," the detective said. "Subconsciously, your brain registered the threat even though you were asleep. That's likely what triggered the sleepwalking. Your mind was trying to protect you. They set up surveillance, increased patrols, fixed the window. They never caught whoever it was. I moved out 2 weeks later. Here's what I can't stop thinking about. Those voicemails were messages from myself at 3:18 a.m. A version of me that woke up, sensed danger, searched for the threat, and tried to warn my conscious self. but why don't I remember? Why do I only know about it through voicemails? And here's what really terrifies me. What if it's still happening? What if there are nights when some part of me wakes up, senses danger, and checks the apartment while my conscious mind sleeps? What if I'm walking around right now in this new apartment, in this supposedly safe building, searching for threats I don't remember in the morning? I check my voicemail every morning now, compulsively, terrified that one day I'll find a new message. And last week I did. Not a voicemail this time. A voice memo in my phone's app. Recorded at 3:18 a.m. I haven't listened to it yet. It's been sitting on my phone for 6 days now. 47 seconds long. Created by me with no memory of making it. Part of me doesn't want to know what it says. Doesn't want confirmation that I'm still sleepwalking, still searching, still finding things I won't remember. But part of me knows I have to listen eventually. Because what if the message is urgent? What if 3:18? Emmy found something in this apartment, something dangerous, something I need to know about. What if this time the message doesn't end with "I'm calling the police"? What if it ends with "He's right behind me"? Story 7. The door that wouldn't stay locked. I checked the door 3 times before bed. Deadbolt, chain lock, knob locked. My nightly ritual. But I woke up at dawn to find it wide open. Morning air drifting through my apartment, all the locks disengaged. I blamed myself. Exhaustion. Forgetfulness. Until the night I pretended to sleep and watched the doorknob turn from the inside. I've always been careful about locks. Maybe overly careful. My mom used to joke that I checked the door so many times before bed I'd wear out the locks. It's just how I'm wired. I can't sleep unless I know everything is secure. My studio apartment had 3 locks on the front door. The standard keyed knob lock, a deadbolt, and a chain lock. Every night before bed I'd check all 3. Knob locked, deadbolt engaged, chain in place. Then I could sleep. It was routine, ritual, non-negotiable. So when I woke up one Tuesday morning in March and found the door ajar, not wide open, just slightly, maybe 3 inches, I immediately assumed I'd screwed up, forgotten the ritual, been too tired, too distracted. I got up and closed the door, checking the locks. Everything worked fine. I went to work feeling uneasy, but convinced myself it was my fault. That night I was extra careful. I stood at the door for a full minute, checking each lock twice. Knob, deadbolt, chain, all secure. I woke up Wednesday morning to the door open again, wider this time, maybe 6 inches. Cool morning air flowing into the apartment. My heart raced. I got up and walked to the door slowly, checking the hallway. Empty. Nothing disturbed. I closed the door and examined the locks. They were all disengaged, not broken, not forced, just unlocked, as if someone had calmly opened them from the inside. I checked the windows. Locked. I checked for signs of a break-in. Nothing. Everything else in the apartment was untouched. I called the landlord. He came over, examined the locks, found nothing wrong with them. "These are good locks," he said. "Deadbolts solid. You sure you're locking them at night?" "Positive," I said. He gave me a look that suggested he didn't believe me but was too polite to say it. "I can install an additional lock if you want, but honestly these should be more than sufficient." "Please," I said. He installed a sliding barrel lock that evening, the kind you can only operate from the inside. "There," he said. 4 locks. Should help you sleep better." That night I checked all 4 locks, twice. Then I set up my phone to record video, propped it on a shelf facing the door. If I was somehow sleepwalking and opening the door myself, I'd have proof. Thursday morning the door was open, all 4 locks disengaged. I grabbed my phone and played back the video. 8 hours of footage sped up. I watched myself go to bed. The apartment was still, the door closed. Hours passed. Nothing. Then at 4:47 a.m. the screen went black just for a second. When the video came back, the door was open. My stomach dropped. 1 second of darkness, and when the feed resumed, the door was ajar and all the locks were undone. The video had glitched at the exact moment something happened. I played it again. Same thing. 4:47 a.m., 1 second of darkness, door open. I checked the video file's metadata. No gaps, no cuts. The file was continuous, but somehow in a single second, someone had opened 4 locks in the door. I filed a police report, showed them the video. They were skeptical. Could be a technical glitch, one officer said. Phone cameras do weird things sometimes. 4 locks don't open themselves, I said. They agreed to increase patrols in the area, but said without evidence of forced entry or theft, there wasn't much they could do. They suggested I install a security camera. I bought a dedicated camera that night, a real one, battery-powered, cloud-connected. I mounted it above the door, aimed directly at the locks. If something happened, I'd have footage. I also bought a rubber doorstop, old-fashioned, simple, impossible to remove from the outside. I wedged it under the door after checking all the locks. Friday morning, the door was open. The doorstop was across the room, kicked aside. All 4 locks disengaged. I checked the camera footage on my phone, my hands shaking. The video was crystal clear. I watched myself check the locks, wedge the doorstop in place, and go to bed. The apartment was silent and still. At 4:47 a.m. exactly, the camera's feed glitched. 1 second of distortion, pixelated static. When it cleared, the door was open, the doorstop was on the floor, the locks were undone. And here's what made my blood turn to ice. In the single frame before the glitch, I saw something, just for a fraction of a second, barely perceptible. A shadow, human-shaped, standing right in front of the camera. I screen capped the frame and zoomed in. The figure was blurry, distorted, but definitely there. Someone had been standing in my apartment at 4:47 a.m. directly in front of the camera. But there was no one else in the video. No one entering, no one leaving. Just me, asleep in bed, and then that single frame of a shadow. I couldn't stay there anymore. I packed a bag and went to stay with my friend Megan, told her everything. She let me crash on her couch, said I could stay as long as I needed. "You think someone's breaking in?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "The footage doesn't make sense. But the door keeps opening." I called a locksmith, explained the situation. He went to my apartment and examined everything. Called me an hour later. "I found something," he said, his voice uneasy. "The locks are fine, but there's scratches on the interior side of the deadbolt. Fresh scratches. Someone's been unlocking it from inside." "That's impossible," I said. "I live alone." "I know," he said, "but someone's been manipulating these locks from the inside of your apartment." I went back with Megan and the locksmith. He showed me the scratches, tiny marks around the deadbolt's interior mechanism, consistent with someone using a tool to turn it from the inside. "Any idea how someone could be getting in?" I asked. He shook his head. "Windows are secure. Door's the only entry point. But for someone to unlock it from inside..." He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. We searched the apartment together, checked every closet, every cabinet, under the bed, behind furniture. The apartment was small, a studio, maybe 500 square feet. There was nowhere to hide. "Maybe someone was getting in earlier, hiding until you went to sleep, then leaving at night," Megan suggested. "But the video shows no one," I said. We had no answers. I decided to stay one more night, but this time I'd stay awake. I'd watch the door myself, see what happened at 4:47 a.m. Megan offered to stay with me, but I told her I'd be fine. I wanted to handle this myself. That night I went through my normal routine, checked all 4 locks, wedged the doorstop, set up the camera. Then I lay in bed with the lights off, eyes open, watching the door. Midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Nothing, just the sounds of the building at night, distant footsteps from upstairs, the hum of the refrigerator, traffic outside. 3 a.m., 4 a.m. My eyes burned with exhaustion, but I didn't let myself blink. 4:30 a.m. My eyelids were getting heavy. I sat up, splashed water on my face, did jumping jacks to stay awake. 4:47 a.m. I was staring directly at the door when it happened. The doorknob started to turn, slowly, from the inside. I watched, frozen, as the knob rotated. Then the deadbolt. I heard it slide open with a soft clunk. Then the chain rattled as it was lifted from its track. The locks were opening themselves, no hands, no shadow, no figure. Just the locks, disengaging one by one as if an invisible person was calmly unlocking them. The door swung open, the doorstop scraped across the floor, pushed aside by nothing. Cold air drifted in. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I sat in bed staring at the open door, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. Then I heard it. Footsteps. In the hallway outside my apartment. Soft, deliberate footsteps, walking away. I forced myself to get up. On shaking legs, I walked to the door and looked into the hallway. Empty. But I heard the footsteps continuing down the hall, growing fainter until they stopped at the stairwell door. I heard that door open and close, then silence. I stood in my doorway for a long time, trying to make sense of it. There was no one in the hallway, but I'd heard footsteps, and I'd watched my locks open themselves. I called the police again, told them what I'd witnessed. They sent officers, but by then there was nothing to see, no evidence. Just my story and video footage showing another glitch at 4:47 a.m. I moved out the next day, broke my lease, didn't care about the penalties. I couldn't stay in that apartment. Before I left, I talked to some of the other tenants, asked if anyone had experienced anything strange. The woman in the apartment below mine, directly below, mentioned offhandedly that she used to hear footsteps above her at night. Around 5 a.m. She'd assumed it was me, but my apartment had carpet, and I'd been in bed at 5 a.m. not walking around. I think whatever was opening my door was walking through my apartment every night. And when it left, it walked through her ceiling. I've been in a new place for 2 months now. Different building, better security, the door stays locked. But sometimes I wake up at 4:47 a.m. and I lie in the darkness listening, waiting for the sound of locks disengaging. So far, the door has stayed closed, but I can't shake the feeling that whatever was in that apartment wasn't confined to that space, that it found me because I was there, and if it wants to, it could find me again. Last week, I woke up at 4:47 a.m. to a sound, not the locks, not the door, footsteps, in my new apartment, soft and deliberate, walking from the door to my bed. I didn't open my eyes. I lay perfectly still, barely breathing until the footsteps stopped, right beside my bed. I haven't slept since. Story 8. I heard myself laughing in the next room. I was editing audio files when I heard it through the wall. Laughter. My laughter. The exact rhythm, pitch, and tone. It was coming from the apartment next door, the one that had been empty for months. I stood frozen, listening to myself laugh over and over, echoing through the thin walls. When I finally called the landlord, he told me something that made my blood run cold. That apartment wasn't empty anymore. Someone had moved in 3 weeks ago, and they'd been recording me. I'm a freelance audio editor. I work from home, mostly on podcasts and voiceover projects. My apartment is small but quiet, perfect for someone who spends 8 hours a day listening to audio through headphones. The apartment next door, 7B, had been vacant since I moved in 4 months ago. I'd asked the landlord about it once, and he said he was waiting for the right tenant. I liked having an empty apartment next to me. Meant less noise, more peace. That changed 3 weeks ago, though I didn't know it at the time. I was working late one night around 11 p.m., editing interview audio for a podcast. Standard work, cutting out ums and ahs, balancing levels, cleaning up background noise. I had my headphones on, focused. I took them off to grab water from the kitchen. That's when I heard it. Laughter, coming from the wall I shared with 7B. I stopped mid-step and listened. It was faint but distinct, someone laughing. Not unusual, I thought. Sound carries weird in apartment buildings, probably someone upstairs or outside. I got my water and went back to work. An hour later, I took another break, headphones off, stretching my neck. And I heard it again. Laughter, same location, definitely coming from 7B, but this time something about it made me pause. The rhythm was familiar, the pitch. I walked closer to the wall and listened. It stopped. I felt foolish standing there, ear to the wall, listening to silence. I went back to work. The next night it happened again. I was editing a voice memo recording, just finishing up around midnight. I took my headphones off and heard laughter through the wall. Clear, distinct, and unmistakably familiar. It sounded like me, not just similar, not kind of like me. It was my laugh, the exact cadence, the same slightly too loud burst at the end, the same rhythm I'd heard in recordings of myself for years. I stood frozen, listening. The laughter continued for maybe 10 seconds, then stopped. My skin crawled. I walked to the wall and pressed my ear against it. Silence. Then faintly I heard audio playing, muffled, indistinct, but definitely voices, like someone was playing a recording. I knocked on the wall. Hello? The audio stopped immediately. Silence. I waited. Nothing. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone had finally moved into 7B. Maybe they were watching something on TV, a show or movie where someone's laugh happened to sound like mine. Coincidence. But the unease wouldn't leave. The next morning I checked with the landlord. I caught him in the lobby as he was leaving. Hey, did someone move into 7B? I asked, trying to sound casual. He glanced at his phone, distracted. Yeah, a few weeks ago. Quiet guy, works nights, I think. Why? Just curious, haven't seen anyone. He keeps to himself, the landlord said, already walking away. A few weeks ago, so someone had been living next door and I hadn't even known. That should have made me feel better, explained the sounds, the laughter. Someone was just watching TV or listening to something. But it didn't explain why the laughter sounded exactly like mine. That night I paid attention. I kept my headphones around my neck instead of over my ears so I could hear both my work audio and the sounds around me. Around 11 p.m. it started. Through the wall, audio playing, voices. I couldn't make out words, but I recognized the rhythm of conversation. Then, unmistakably, my laugh. I paused my work and listened closely. The audio next door continued. I heard my voice, not just laughing now, but talking. Muffled, but definitely my voice. They were playing recordings of me. My heart raced. I grabbed my phone and opened the voice memo app. I started recording, holding the phone up to the wall. For 5 minutes I recorded my voice laughing and talking through the wall. Then it stopped. I played back what I'd captured. It was faint, but there. My laugh, my speech patterns, my voice. I tried to think of an explanation. Maybe my neighbor was a podcast listener, and I'd coincidentally edited a podcast he was listening to. Maybe my voice was on something publicly available, and he just happened to be playing it. But that didn't feel right. The audio wasn't continuous like a podcast. It was clips, short bursts of laughter, snippets of speech. Like someone was playing isolated recordings. The next day, I went through my recent projects. Had I worked on anything that might be publicly available? Anything my neighbor could be listening to? Nothing matched. Most of my work was for private clients, unreleased podcasts, internal corporate videos, voiceover projects under NDA. That night, I decided to confront it. I'd knock on 7B's door and ask directly. I stood in the hallway at 11 p.m. staring at the door marked 7B. Light shone from underneath. Someone was home. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder. "Hello? I'm your neighbor from 7A. Can I talk to you for a second?" Silence, but I could hear movement inside. Footsteps, soft and deliberate, moving away from the door. "I just want to ask you something," I said, trying to keep my voice friendly. "It'll just take a minute." No response. The footsteps stopped. I waited for a full minute, then gave up and went back to my apartment. That night, the audio through the wall was louder. My voice, laughing and talking for hours. It felt deliberate. It felt like whoever was in 7B wanted me to hear it. I called the landlord the next morning, told him my neighbor was playing loud audio at night, disturbing me. Could he talk to the tenant? The landlord sighed, said he'd handle it. That night, silence. No audio, no laughter. I thought maybe the landlord had said something and the issue was resolved. But the silence felt wrong. It felt like waiting. At 2 a.m. I woke up to sound, not from 7B, from my own apartment. My laptop was on the coffee table and it was playing audio, my own voice recorded during one of my work sessions playing through the speakers. I hadn't left anything open. I'd shut down my laptop before bed. I got up and walked to the laptop. The screen was on, showing my audio editing software. A file was playing, one of my old projects, a voice memo I'd edited weeks ago. I stopped the playback and checked the file's history. It had been accessed at 2:03 a.m. moments ago. My apartment door was locked. Windows were locked. I was alone. But someone had accessed my laptop and played that file. I checked my laptop's Wi-Fi history. It showed a connection I didn't recognize, a network called 7B Network. My neighbor's Wi-Fi. My laptop had been connected to it. I immediately disconnected, changed all my passwords, ran a security scan. I found remote access software installed on my computer, hidden, sophisticated, allowing someone to control my laptop remotely. Someone had hacked my computer, and based on the network name, it was my neighbor in 7B. I called the police, told them everything, the recordings, the hacking, the remote access. They took a report and sent officers to 7B. The apartment was empty, completely empty, no furniture, no belongings, no tenant. The landlord was shocked. He had records showing someone had signed a lease, moved in, paid rent. But the apartment was vacant. The name on the lease was fake. The ID used to rent it was fake. The whole thing was a setup. The police's tech division examined my laptop. The remote access software had been on my computer for over a month. Whoever installed it had access to everything, my files, my recordings, my microphone, my camera. They'd been watching and listening to me for weeks. Recording me. Playing the recordings back through the wall to let me know they were there. The detective asked if I had any idea who might do this. Any enemies, stalkers, ex-partners? I didn't. I lived a quiet life. I worked from home, didn't have drama, didn't have anyone who'd want to torment me like this. They never found who did it. The trail went cold. Fake identity, untraceable software, no physical evidence. I moved out a week later. I'm in a new apartment now. Different building, different neighborhood. I bought a new laptop, changed all my accounts, installed every security measure I could find. But I can't shake the feeling that whoever was in 7B isn't done. Because here's the thing. They had access to my microphone and camera for over a month. They recorded everything. My work, my calls, my conversations with friends, my private moments. They have hours of footage, hours of audio. My voice, my face, my life stored somewhere I can't access. And sometimes, late at night, I hear it. Faint, barely perceptible, like it's coming from very far away. My own voice, laughing. I check my laptop, nothing's playing. I check my phone, nothing. But I hear it, and I wonder if they're still listening, still watching. Still playing back recordings of me in some room I'll never see, reminding me that they know everything, that they could be anywhere, that they could be right next door even now. And I'd never know until I heard myself laughing through the wall.